Welcome to the Know Your Ship podcast, presented by eHub. I'm your host, Frank Dolce. This podcast is going to be so interesting because you're the most interesting person that nobody knows. Of course, that's Rustin Fullmer of Adobe. And if you know anything about boxing and Utah, then you know the Fullmer name.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's your family.
Yeah. Yep.
But you didn't grow up to be a boxer.
No. In fact, I only went to that gym once. Mm-hmm.
Was that an uncle or something?
Grandfather's cousin. So I don't know how to do the hereditary math, but yes, he is a close relation, just generations away.
Is there math involved with hereditary?
It seems like it.
Stuff. I don't know.
Chromosomal math.
Is that a thing? I skipped that in college.
It seems like there are whole businesses based on that.
Yeah. Have you done one of those? Have you taken the test?
No. I
haven't either. But what would your test, if you took the test, what do you suspect your test would say? Like where are you, what's your heritage?
Well, my father maintains that we're English royalty. I know there's got to be a lot of German because my mom is 100% German.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Without doing the chromosomal math. She was born and raised in Germany. My dad was born and raised in little Mackie, Idaho. So we'll call it Germanic Idahoan.
Yeah, that's close. I suspect that I'm half Italian and half German because my dad is, I think he's full Italian and I think my mom's full German. But I'm sure it wouldn't turn out that way. But there's other things.
Mm-hmm.
There's other things. Well, we had a chance to talk a little bit before this. You have a fascinating story. I can't wait to tell everybody about
that
your story.
No one knows.
Yes. That's the interesting thing is that more people need to know about you.
I don't agree.
This is your platform, the Know Your Ship podcast.
Okay.
You never know where this is going to lead. You were a military kid, and so you moved around quite a bit.
Yeah,
in your life.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Tell us about your family. Tell us about your dad and mom.
My mother, like I said, was born and raised in Germany. Her parents were they are survivors, effectively. My German grandparents, they survived the war. My opa was conscripted into the Nazi army and fought on the Polish front. Was shot in the head, sent back to the hospital, and then prematurely sent to the Russian front, where he was captured and spent 6 years in the gulag. Yeah, the Siberian camps.
Oh,
said he ate turnips and onions, and that's how they survived. So, and he had this big dent in his head, and he would always let us feel it, but he would never tell us anything about his experience. Not until he was 88 did he actually speak it out to everyone. Mm-hmm. And my mother then recorded it and stuff. Oh. And then my oma, she was on the wrong side of the fence when the fence was built, and her and her sister escaped through the fence, and they met effectively down in Bavaria. And my mother was born and raised in Stuttgart, and then my dad met her when he was stationed there for the army. So she is a GI bride, as the Germans don't affectionately call it that.
Oh.
And then, she had a rough time with my opa after that happened. Yeah.
Getting involved with an American.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, but then as soon as they had me.
Oh, you were the great uniter.
Mm-hmm.
Do people still call you that?
Yeah.
The great connector, the great uniter.
Once a month.
People?
Once a month, maybe. It's diminished.
Yes.
Nobody knows me, so.
Well, they will now.
Yeah, okay.
They will
That's
now.
True. All right.
Okay, so then
is that our theme?
Yes.
People know, like this is the opposite of Ron Burgundy.
You're
people
the most
know me.
Interesting person that nobody knows. That's
right.
our theme. That's going to be the title of this. I'm fortunate to know you. Your parents then moved back to the States at that point?
Yep.
And your dad had a very interesting career.
Yeah. Well, he grew up as a farmer boy in Mackie, Idaho, which that entails a lot of different jobs. But he was working, as he would affectionately tell me. I started working when I was out of the womb. At 8 years old, I was riding the motorcycle, and 10 years old, I was driving the truck, and all that kind of stuff. But he, Mackie, Idaho is a beautiful place. A lot of fond memories going there, except for anything related to sheep. And there's some dumb animals. They're itchy and just dumb. But the upbringing that he had was hard. Like it was a
farm life.
No nonsense, hard.
Up early, working all day long.
Pay your own way.
Yeah.
Pennies a day kind of thing. And it's my uncle, or I guess my great uncle, did sugar beets for UNI Sugar. Grandpa drove truck and did also, he ran sheep, all that kind of stuff. So it was tough as nails kind of thing. And so he went into the military to kind of escape it. And then after he met my mom and they got married, he came back to the University of Idaho and got his engineering degree. And then became an officer in the Army as a Corps of Engineer corpsman. So
yeah, and the Army Corps of Engineers, that's a fascinating unit, and their fingerprints are all across the nation, probably the world. But some of the things that they did are
bridge building, dams, a lot of dams, a lot of your kind of your national forest projects. There's a lot of Cold War era projects that they did, effectively during peacetime. When you weren't deployed, you were working on the many projects that we have here in the country and our partner nations and stuff. But he was deployed a lot, and it was an intense time until the 90s, and then they were deployed for other reasons.
Sure.
So, yeah.
And that manifested itself in an interesting way, I think, in your childhood. Well, your dad had a strict upbringing, like the farm life upbringing. That could be tough.
Yeah.
And it certainly teaches valuable lessons. And then he finds himself in this military career, and the career didn't really allow him to share all of the stuff that he was doing. And so how did that manifest itself in the family makeup? Because it must have been difficult in terms of communicating what your dad was doing and where he was spending all of his time, and when he got to spend time with you.
I mean, I think it definitely brought up more questions than answers. And it's certainly a very stressful career, especially when he was a company commander and was in charge of the lives of a lot of young people that were just joining the military. And it's kind of you rule with an iron fist. There's a lot of, you're dealing with lives. And so there's no room for error, for back talk, for anything that is not part of the plan or path. And I know that they teach you, like, adapt, overcome, improvise, all of that. But it's not exactly an area where creativity is rewarded in that way. It's kind of a structured arrangement. And I think he definitely brought that home with him. Is that like this is the way it is. And being the oldest, I was afraid of ever deviating from this is the way it is. And so he expressed his love and his pride and all of that in being at my sporting events. And sometimes being a loud voice at my sporting events, and then in the written word, like he would write letters, and that's how I would know how he felt about me a lot of times. But aside from that, it was a very, it was a very rigid environment. And, my mom, she's all about the love and the heart, and, but you want that from both if you have an opportunity to have it from both. And so that I think kind of affected the way I parent today, the way I work and manage today. And so, yeah, everybody's, their initiation story, if you will, is different, but it certainly does influence a lot of how you do what you do today, especially if you want to do it different. Some people are blessed to have like this perfect, the way that they would have liked to have been brought up. And it now translates in how they parent, and there's an easier transition for them. For some of us, probably an equal number, you're like, there's goodness there, but there's definitely things I want to do different because I did not maximize my youth or my childhood.
Interesting. You told one one story. You're athletic, and you were a good athlete growing up, but that wasn't always the path in your household. And very early on, you were taught,
The basketball story.
yeah,
Yeah.
that the path was nope. You have to make your way in life, and here's how you make your way in life:
hmm
work, effort, sacrifice. And how did that sacrifice come about for you?
Well, this was sophomore year, and I'm from Virginia. I claim Virginia. Virginia is where we settled. Dad retired from the Army there, joined the State Department there. All my family's still there, so I'm a Virginia boy. But made the basketball team. You wouldn't tell by my size, but I was a pretty good ball player for a little bit there. And
You're a sophomore and you made the varsity basketball team.
right,
Yeah.
And at the same time, my dad had, we had looked into where would be interesting places to work, and we had heard good things about working at Chick-fil-A. And I went down both paths at once, and both paths worked out. And Dad was like, "No, you're taking the path of work. You made a commitment there. This is more important, life lesson wise." There's a long list of reasons why that was chosen, and I had to put myself through school, pay for my own gas, all that kind of stuff, and so working was what was chosen.
At that point, I know your dad had a military career. Your mom was full-time stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
So was it more of a financial thing, or did your parents have the means to financially support you through post high school?
I mean, I always had, we didn't do anything. It was just tight. It's tight.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the military doesn't pay nearly what we value them. Same thing as teachers and
no
others,
kidding.
right? And even as an officer, it's not a whole lot, especially when there's 4 kids and you're constantly moving around, and you actually live in expensive areas. Typically, that's where a lot of the bases are.
Mm-hmm.
And so there wasn't a lot. And there was no mystery about that. Like, we went to, I believe it was 7th grade basketball, where we went to a used shoe store, and on the shelf, it was like one of those aura moments. I saw a pair of British Knights, and at the time, the BKs were pretty sweet.
Yep, absolutely.
And I immediately wanted those. And as I like picked them up off the shelf, like the soles were like hanging on by a thread. But I was like, if we're buying shoes from this store, these are the ones I want. And we got them, and we super glued them, and they lasted for the rest of the season. It was pretty amazing. And then the next year, my mom got me a pair of Reeboks, and I remember it was communicated to me how much of a sacrifice that was. But a brand new pair of Reeboks for my 8th grade basketball season, that was a big deal for them. So it's always been part of our lives that just because you don't have much in terms of a financial commitment from your parents, that doesn't mean that that doesn't impact the way that you feel at home. It just manifests itself a little bit more, and as soon as you leave the home, right? And
Sure.
And that's what we struggle with now. We were talking about, but that's what we struggle about with our kids sometimes, like this culture of immediate gratification, whether it's on social media or whether it's, hey, I want those shoes. Those are the shoes everybody else is getting. And even recently, my son, our whole baseball team did a buzz and bleach.
There it is.
They buzz their heads and then they bleach it. My son he'll hate this, but he has beautiful hair, like curly, awesome hair. And now he looks like Eminem.
Like Samson hair.
Yes.
And
like,
now,
where did the strength go? Yeah. Now you can only pitch 60 miles an hour instead of 70. But it's this thing where there's just, everything's immediate. And I think the way that my parents were raising me was, you have to, it's a grind. And that has affected me throughout my life. It's a grind. It's a step-by-step process. It's not gonna.
We're gonna get into that, because I think knowing your backstory a little and knowing you now and the way you approach your work life and your family life, there's lots of things to pull out from your past. And I think the really interesting thing is, we'll think about this as we're talking, is how thoughtful you are about all of your experiences and trying to pick the really good stuff and sift out the stuff that maybe was overbearing or uncomfortable, and trying to be the best parent, the best peer at work that you can be based on all of this stuff that you had to go through. And by the way, we're not even there yet. Like you're just in high school right now. We got to get this could be a 3-hour podcast.
And so many people would love that.
Yes. Right. And you know what they're going to say? I'm so glad that I got to know that guy that I didn't know anything
that nobody knew about.
That nobody knew.
I love it.
Absolutely.
It's an enigma.
So you're now, okay, you're working, you're getting through high school, and you have this thought in the back of your head, like, I have to pay for everything. I'm going to have to figure this out. Tell us about that path and that story as you head into that post high school era of your life.
So I worked through high school at Chick-fil-A and evenings and summers. And at the time, I don't even know if they do it anymore, but if you make a certain level, like crew leader, and you've done 2 years and or 2,000 hours or more, they'll pay for your first semester of college. So immediately I went from earning $7 an hour to effectively $8.50 an hour. And that was fun math. And then so I knew that my first semester was going to be paid for, which was a huge relief for me because like I had mentioned, I will say one thing that the biggest surprise my parents ever gave me was that I thought my whole high school career I was saving up to go on my LDS mission because that was the next thing. And at the time it's at 19 and I wasn't even going to go to college for a year. I was just going to work and save up to go on that mission. And I was pushing carts at Costco, which was probably the best hourly paying job at the time. It was like $9 an hour. And I was like, I'm in the sun, I'm getting exercise, all this great stuff. And then I put in for those of your audience that are familiar with the process for going on a mission, you put in your application and you kind of cross your fingers. You're like, oh, well, I need to learn German better so I can communicate to my German family. I wrote German all through my application. They're going to choose Germany because I got a German mom. And
absolutely.
But you wait and you're kind of excited about it, but you're working. And after I had officially put in my papers, my parents came to me and they said, all right, we have a deal for you. We're going to pay for the rest of your first year of college, or we're going to pay for your mission. And that was the single biggest financial surprise I've ever had to that point or ever have since, because the wave of relief that came over me on being able to just focus on one of them and not like lose sleep as an 18-year-old on how I'm going to take care of all this stuff. That was huge. And so I get my paper back and I thought it said Indiana at first, but it said India. They're sending you to India. I'm like, there's no LDS mission in India. And there barely was. There was 17 visas. So that's a different story altogether. Like all the times we almost died and all the great people that you met and all the wonderful things that you did. That was like my first operations job, really. So that was an incredible experience. You basically had to be a leader the whole time you were there. And when I came back, I thought I was going to go to University of Virginia. I had been accepted there, and that's a great university, and it would have still, but I no longer counted as a resident because I'd been gone for 2 years. And so it was no longer financially viable. So came to Brigham Young as an undergrad. First semester was paid for by Chick-fil-A, and I was immediately applying for all the FAFSA stuff.
Yeah.
For student aid and stuff, and that paid for the rest of the first year. And
I have a couple questions before we move on. How do you feel about Indian food today?
Oh my, it's yes.
Favorite?
Love it.
It's right up. Is Indian food in America the same as Indian food in India?
If you go to like a Bombay house, that is a really nice. If you're getting the normal curry with naan, that's a normal or high-end North Indian meal. If you're getting like the biryani, that's what we would have every day. That's rice with chicken that they make in a huge pot that tastes wonderful, but that they just put a huge scoop out on your plate and that's what you eat. That's like your day-to-day.
Gotcha.
The curry with the naan bread, that was That was a bit spendier, and that was typically less South India, more North India at the time.
Gotcha. Was deciding to attend BYU the biggest mistake you ever made in your life?
I mean, it's up there. No, it was great.
I had a feeling.
It was great. I mean,
okay.
I love the bias, but
you probably you couldn't get into the U.
you know,
I understand.
yes, and you know, I can wear red just as much as I wear blue. I'm an American fork football coach.
Yes,
I have to wear red and black, and
you look darn good in it.
I love the look.
Okay, so you go to BYU, and BYU is very much a financial decision as much as it is a well-respected university.
Mhm.
Am I missing time here? Where is the ROTC?
Oh, that's how do you pay for the rest of school?
Okay, so you've applied. You've been admitted.
I'm at school.
You're at
this
school,
point.
and now you decide that
Yeah,
ROTC. I'm going to become an Air Force pilot, right?
yeah.
You saw Top Gun, and you're Maverick.
There was
That's Navy,
there was
though.
a bit of an urgency to how are you going to support yourself, and so I was working immediately at different places, but one of the options was what organizations allow you to continue to get your degree but offer a career path.
Mm-hmm.
And having grown up in the military and multi-generations of military in some form or fashion, it made sense to look into it. And I just wasn't, the allure of the Army wasn't there, but being an Air Force pilot was like, that sounds cool.
Mm.
I could do that. And so I enrolled in the ROTC program, and that changed the entire approach to my degree. Like I did geographic information systems, I did aerospace studies, I did poli-sci and stats and like all these things that they want you to do.
Mm-hmm.
So it changed my minors and majors, and then it it paid for my final 2 years of school. So, yep.
And then you had a little bit. You were talking about this. The military isn't as strategic as the military is. They're not always as strategic in terms of how many people they take in and when they halt that process, and then managing that if they have too many people.
Yeah.
And you were the unfortunate, I'll say victim, but victim maybe isn't the word, but you had a medical issue that
they don't do
disqualified.
They're not known for their hiring practices and termination practices. Like it's at least how it was articulated to us is that they struggle with like just in time demand, and that would be how many pilots do we need, how many engineers do we need, and so they'll solve for that not with a long-term approach, but more like just in the moment. And they had hired too many pilots over the 2 or 3 preceding years from when I was going to commission. And so we are very close to commissioning at this point. I'd already done some training down at Luke Air Force Base in T-37s and T-38s. We'd already started that process, and I was all set to become an Air Force pilot. And then it felt like minutes before graduation and commissioning that they said, you know what, we're now in an attrition year. We're going to re-examine all the medicals. That's the first place they start. And I had put on my application, which, you're supposed to be as honest as possible. And I had put that I have consistent heartburn. And they made me go get an endoscope or the scoping thing. And they found out that it wasn't acid reflux. It was GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disorder, which is technically debilitating. You don't get better from it. It's easy to manage, but you don't get better from it. There's no way to self-heal it.
And what is the management of it? So you can't fix it.
I take 1 pill of pantoprazole a day. It's basically Nexium a day. And I operate as a normal human being. But because you check the box of debilitating, that was a disqualifier that year. Then all of a sudden, and there's lots of peaks and valleys to many people's stories. And I think that's what makes all of us interesting. But that was a valley for me because there was concern that I had to pay the scholarship back because they were not clear about that.
Initially said
the standard practice is that if you don't commission, you pay it over time back.
Pay back your scholarship.
And thankfully they came back and said that's not the case. But everything I'd been doing for those 2.5+ years was designed to be an Air Force pilot.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm at this moment, this crossroad moment of, I've been rejected, and where do I go from here?
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of several moments like that have, like, what do you do? Where do you go when you're at crossroads? Where do you go when you're at low points? How do you handle that burden? And, I'm out here in Utah. My parents are only so helpful, right?
Mm-hmm. And across the country in Virginia.
Mm-hmm. And you feel alone. You feel alone. And that is, those are low moments. But thankfully, I'd been doing part-time work with the founder of eHub. And at the time, it was a different company. And he was looking to go into some new ventures because the other company we had been operating was doing really well. And he's like, I want you to come and run operations and stuff for this new venture fund that I'm basically putting together.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a huge moment that, hey, if you open yourself up to people you trust with your problems, then other people are generally good and they're going to look out for you. And if they trust you, they're going to find something. And that was one of my first moments of that, where somebody extended trust in my moment of need that then put me down a new path that I had was unexpected.
Yeah, that's a great story. So you hit this valley. You have some work career opportunities though that you've been working on. Now that's going to turn into maybe more full-time stuff. Where are you in your personal life at this point? Are you married? Are you?
No. I was single and obnoxious. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
now you're married and obnoxious.
Yeah.
One
but
thing.
at least somebody has put a vote card in my corner. No, the woman that I did end up marrying, she at this time, Nikki, was on a mission. Mm-hmm. She went on a mission late in her. I think she was 24 when she went, 25, and she went to Hawaii. And so I decided to get my life in order while she was gone, so that when she came back, I was attractive to her. And even her version of me is, she's still surprised that I just saw that, hey, the path for us is we're going to get married, and I just wouldn't I wouldn't deviate from that until it was time for something else to happen. But she's like, you're always good about a vision, but you're even better at making that become a reality when you really care about it. And I think that's been kind of an approach for a long time, is that if you're down, like, let's dream it up. And if there's a path to it, then let's go for it. But
yeah. Is that behavior that you learned through all of this experience growing up? Like, you were kind of put on a path and you just had to follow that. And are there lessons in there about having some vision and then sticking to whatever that path is, working through it, grinding through some of the difficult times like you've had to do?
yeah, I think you could look at the sum of the experiences and where they have led, not as a bunch of, there's so many people that have these amazing stories where it popped, like nothing to rags to riches, and these big moments where people's lives changed overnight. And I think that coming out of each of those valleys, it's never been a quick fix. It's been a grind. And while I wish it was different, I wish I was sitting here in maybe different circumstances because some of those moments were immediate. I don't know that I would have done well with that. I think that it's always been the value is in the grind. And I think that's even true for where I'm at today, like at Adobe. Like, it's never been easy. It's always been a stress test, pushing you to new places. And I don't know. I don't know that I would have it any other way because it's just that's how I want to live life and how I want to raise kids and stuff. Is that it's there's a military phrase. It's like slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
Mm.
Right. That's something my dad said all the time. My youngest brother is a special operator now in the Army, and they still use it. Right. Like you want to get something done right. That's the fastest path, not necessarily speed.
Yeah.
So
So you're working now. Nikki's on a mission. How are things going with the company?
at that time, it was good. It was
You're
good.
on the
Yeah, it
you're on
was.
the upswing.
There was high
Things are going.
demand for what the fund was working on, and tons of great real estate projects. And 2007 hits, and
You said tons of great real estate projects.
there was a lot of things that the company was doing, and maybe that's one of the not maybe as you look back, there was too much diversification
Mhm.
and there was too much leverage going on,
Mhm.
and we were just a year too late on a lot of those projects. Like a lot of people
You're heavy-
made buku bucks, and they were raking it in a year
Mm.
before, and it's just a little bit late and too much leverage. And
Gotcha.
then you have a situation like 2007, 2008, where if you had any positions in real estate where you required leverage, then you were SOL.
So you go through this experience with the military that you described as a valley. That was just what, 2 years previous to this experience?
Yeah, 2.5 probably.
So 2.5 years later. So you go through this valley, you're working your way out,
Newlywed.
and now you hit this other
Mhm.
incident. What do you call it? Obstacle, valley,
Another valley.
another valley.
Mhm.
Okay. And now you're newly married.
Mhm.
One thing that you said is that I thought was interesting is, and maybe you can explain this, you internalized this and took it upon yourself to work your way out of it, try and figure it out.
Mhm.
And are you saying that you just didn't share that with your family at that point, or how were you now trying to dig yourself out of this next hole that you found yourself in?
I don't know that this is the right way to do it. But this is the way that I did it. Like it was minimal involvement of other people in terms of sharing the load, sharing the burden. Like to this day, Nikki is saying that when we talk about it, she's surprised by the amount of stress and the lack of sleep and things, because I held the burden, and I held it on my own. And what I did ask for was I went to a few people that I trusted and said, this is what I can offer. I don't want to get paid. I want something else before I take the next step. I need to work my way out of this with more credibility.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily enough, there was some people that I had worked with before that were, trusting of that enough. And it's a well-respected venture capital firm in Salt Lake City, and they let me be an associate for a year or so, and then I parlayed that into business school. But it was a full reset. It's just like the missing out on being a pilot. It was this event that just required a full reset, and there was no miracle path out of the full reset. Like you had to take it step by step.
It's so fascinating because military ends and you don't say, well, I can still do something with the military. You're describing it as a full reset. Nope, I'm going a different path.
Mhm.
Here we go. Down again. Full. It's not like, I mean, you did a little bit parlay it into something else because of the relationships that you had and built, but it wasn't related to what you were doing previously. So another full reset.
Mhm.
And I know you said you didn't rely on people, but you did have a few people who stepped up
Mhm.
when you were applying to the business school.
Yeah, later on for sure. Like, and when I say, I meant sharing the burden. Like
Sure.
I wasn't seeing anyone to be on their couch to say what was me.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody wanted to hear that.
Oh, but
It was
I love this part of your story. But go ahead.
but I decided, hey, the best way to do a reset and to exit this whole experience with full credibility is one of several things, and one of those things was to go and get your MBA, and that was we didn't have any money, we didn't have any. I wasn't sure about it at first because it was like, hey, that's a 2-year commitment. I didn't know enough about business school to know what it would yield, but I knew that having a reset was going to be important if I wanted to be attractive. Because my story is, when you're trying to interview for internships or for full-time jobs in business school, they don't give you this time to talk about your story. They want it in 2 minutes.
Yeah. And it's
And
like,
I'm like,
oh, you
I was
failed
going to
in
be a
this?
pilot. Then I did venture and we sucked at it. And then I did venture again and yada, yada, yada.
And
You know,
we did worse.
yeah, there. And what do you want to be? Oh, an executive, you know, and so they're not, anyways. So, I start down the path. My GMAT test practice scores sucked. I was at like 650, and you're not getting into any top tier program with 650. I didn't have any letters of recommendation. I didn't have the sterling, hey, I worked at McKinsey for 3 years, work resume. So I was pretty stressed out about it. And one thing after another kind of fell into place where I don't know how it happened, but I went to the testing center that day. Didn't even feel like I did well, but I got a 700. And that's like,
okay,
you want a top 15 program? That's the number. They want to see a 7. Then I went to breakfast with a few people that didn't judge me for past failures. They actually looked at it as like, look, you're going to come into this more richly experienced than other people. And I'm happy to write your letter of recommendation. And I'm like crying because I did not expect them to say that. So I had 4 just amazing letters of recommendation from people that you would recognize the names. And certainly the BYU Decisions Board and the UCLA Decisions Board both recognized the names enough. And then finally, like, I started turning this woe is me, or this burden that I've been having on this experience, into something that is a differentiation. It's like, yeah, I'm not the McKinsey person. I'm the person that has been through the fire a few times and will come and join your company and not repeat the mistakes of the past. And that actually seemed to resonate. Like, I got an internship at a private equity firm in New York and another internship at Omniture locally, and was interviewing at Google, Amazon, and all those places for my full-time role later on. So, I mean, it clearly worked. And resetting your resume is one thing, but resetting your network, like, I have some of the most amazing people that were in my program that are, you know, the head of Peterson Ventures was in my program. You've got the CEO of Frazzle was one of my closest mates in the program. And I mean, you have all these people that are part of our program that have done just amazing things. Yeah. And those are friends for life, and they're going to be in your corner forever. And so
I like one part. I like the whole story, but there's one part of the story that I really like about, you said, I wasn't on somebody's couch. Oh, woe is me. Because I think that's an attitude, like this grit that you talk about. We don't always see that today. It could be, we could use more of that today. And so I look back on your childhood and a strict relationship with your dad and him putting you on the path, and how this kind of shaped you into the individual that would say, okay, I know that I can work myself out of it. I have to work myself out of it. Yeah. And I like that. I like that lesson. It's not a victim. It's, these are my circumstances. How do I improve my circumstances? And you went to work. I think that's the lesson. Does that resonate throughout? As you look back on your life, is that something that resonates?
Yes. Maybe I'm on the couch right now. This is you're connecting dots.
Dr. Frank.
Yeah, Dr. Frank. We're changing this podcast.
Yeah, my kids are always like, why don't you do that for us? You do it on the podcast.
But yes, I mean, there are like steel threads throughout that people get paid a lot of money to do that for you. But it's, if you know how to work if you know how to grind, if you know how to like not take no as the final answer, and I know all those things just sounded cliche, but in my life, if I had taken no at some of these steps, I don't know where I'd be. I don't know, because there only seemed to be one path, and it was like if I don't roll up my sleeves in this situation, no one's going to be there to lift me up. Like I have to do that myself.
Yeah.
And
I love it.
same is true today. It's the same when I coach my kids in their sports and stuff. It's like one of these things that people lack today is the ability to realize that they've got to. If you want to make the team, you got to grind. If you want to be a starter, you got to put in effort that other people aren't doing. You can't just do what you do at practice.
Yeah.
You got to do it all the time.
Yeah. I had one great coach who's coached several of my kids who said champions are born or champions are made in the backyard. And it's all the time that you spend away from the practice field and from the competitive field, all the time that you spend on your own working on your craft. And I think that is something that probably aligns with you as well. You've parlayed now this experience into, I'm going to jump over a bunch of stuff because I want to get to Adobe and what you're doing at Adobe currently. And I think I'll ask you about what your boss calls you, because I think it's the perfect description of, and you might have to edit it for the podcast, but you found yourself, is this coming out of
business school? Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Into an opportunity with Adobe.
Yeah. So another slight valley, I guess, but I was lucky enough to start getting interviews with some big companies in business school, but those are long drawn out process, very painful. And I thought I had a bird in hand with an amateur offer, but immediately after the summer internship of 2009, something that is well known in these valleys is that Adobe bought Amateur in September of 2009. So all the offers that existed for MBA talent disappeared. And so you thought, hey, I'm starting fresh here. Like, how does this work? And having been a part of acquisitions with Adobe, I get why there's anxiety for the MBA, but also why they're kind of not a priority to work on at the moment, right? Because you have a lot of people that are already having their livelihoods connected to this acquisition.
Yeah.
So I get it now, but at the time I was like, well, where's the message on what happens to me, right? And I thought it was going to be another full reset. And over the holiday break, though, we get an email or letter and a phone call from the talent team, and they said, you're on the list of those that are going to be receiving an opportunity interview for internships, for a full-time role. This is the category of thing, and here are your interview dates. And so, yeah, I had to go sell myself again and find the right role, but I at least was given that opportunity. Like they did come around and like take care of all those that they had signaled was what they were willing to bring on. And what I landed in was just perfect. And the gentleman that hired me is one of my mentors, and he's my Adobe dad, as we affectionately call him. But he's now the CRO at Zora, and he's with Adobe a long time. Basically, became the North America CRO after his role that we were together. But just a fantastic person, great opportunity there. But that one did not end up being a valley because the offer was better. The package was better, and instead of wearing green, I was wearing red, which I'm sure made you happy before we even knew each other. So.
Very happy. Yeah. Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
So now you're in your fourth role with Adobe?
Within Adobe, yeah.
Within Adobe. And how long have you been there?
14 years and change.
And yeah, excellent. And can you tell us what your current boss calls you?
Well, so my manager he has a superpower. Well, let me tell you about the team first, and then
Absolutely.
maybe that makes more context. But
Great.
so I was doing corp dev, M&A type stuff, and then rolled into this role. And this role is all about what can we do to build the most mutually beneficial partnerships with the world's largest brands. How do we partner with Nike to drive cost savings, operational efficiency, supply chain best practices, commerce, all these things that our products deliver. But really, Nike's just looking for, how do I have a more efficient, end-to-end, beautiful customer experience?
Mm-hmm.
But that requires mutual investment, like co-innovation, and it requires technology and people and process. And so we're building what those partnerships look like with all these amazing brands.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what my team does, is the the deals that make the headlines that partners want to announce at like our summit on stage or in the press release, Business Wire, whatever it might be. We get to work on those, but the company is, and by the way, anything I say about Adobe is my opinion,
Yes.
my thoughts, not the content of the company in this setting. So I'm just
Do we have to sign something?
no,
Or do I
but
have
you
to,
just
do
can't
I have to
cut
agree
that.
to that?
You can't cut that line out. is
Okay,
what it-
I won't.
Yeah, these
Do I
are
have to-
Rustin's
I agree.
words, not Adobe PR. So
I agree.
Yes.
Is that okay?
yeah.
Okay.
Agree.
Agree.
Agree to agree. The idea that these partnerships are so valuable to our customers, they're also so valuable to the health of our business.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're doing them right, they might take 6 months to build. When we're not following the process efficiently, or when there's hurdles in the road, they can be over a year.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot to be gained by doing it well, and doing it in a repeatable, well-defined fashion, and launching those repeatable processes across the globe. And that was my charge when I joined the team, was create repeatability and rigor. And how do we find these partnerships? Like, how do we come up with them? How do we design them?
Mm-hmm.
And that has morphed into more and more responsibilities within the team. But the person that manages this team, Kyle, he has a superpower, and it is literally like, think of your favorite coaches of all time.
Mm-hmm.
And in the moment, you might feel these, man, I don't know that I can do that. I don't know that I can do what he's asking me to do.
Mhm.
Or I feel like I'm at my limit. Or, man, could I get a compliment once in a while? Or all these things that are, you're sitting there thinking, man, where can I go from here? But they have an ability to push you beyond what you thought your limits were. And that is what not only do I trust Kyle as a friend and as a mentor, but like, he has this ability to get more than I thought I was able to accomplish or contribute. And that feeling, I think, is pervasive across our team, that we are attached to the right leader in our company.
Mm-hmm.
And we get the most out of each other. And there's tons of accountability with that in mind. But it's a tough environment. It's not a country club like a lot of people think Adobe is, a country club on the
it
hill.
is.
But
That's what I thought.
yeah, and I believe that there might be some roles that are like that
In every organization.
in the building, but I haven't found it yet, nor do I think I want it.
And so within your role, you're known as the guy who gets stuff done.
Oh yeah, the GSD. Mm-hmm.
That's you.
Yeah, and I don't. Sometimes I'm not getting enough of that done, and so you get some criticism or feedback. Feedback's a gift, and sometimes you get those gifts. But but typically, yeah, that's what our team has thought of.
And I just keep going back to your life story and the grind and the way that you approach it. I'll let you describe it if you want. If not, I can describe what you said to me. But I believe that you think that your greatest strength is your work hard, effort, grit attitude, and the way you approach your work. Because maybe you don't feel like you're the most talented guy around, that's how you make up for that stuff. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I don't know that I've ever been the smartest, fastest, certainly not the best looking in the room.
Yeah,
And
that's a high bar.
and there are so many women and men that I know that catch on to things faster, or they have experiences that I don't get, or that I don't have, or they've accomplished things that I admire. And so yeah, you're always, so my default is I gotta grind to get that.
Well, I will tell you, that is your superpower. I've known you for a long time, and I know you as a highly intelligent, highly thoughtful, highly resourceful individual who has all of the talent, but you still put in the work. You still put in the effort. You roll up your sleeves. And so, even with all of your natural talent that maybe you don't see, you put in all of this force behind it. And to me, that's why you're so successful. And I attribute that to all of these things that we talked about leading up to this. It's not an easy life. That doesn't sound like an easy life, but it led you to this really successful point. And before you start welling up in tears, because
Mhm.
I'm being so complimentary,
I'm holding them back.
we're going to go to my next favorite part of the show, which is called 3 Random Questions. Are you
That
ready?
you would not
We're going to
identify
pause.
before time.
We're going to.
Okay.
Are you ready for these?
Yeah.
Who's the greatest basketball player of all time? LeBron James or Michael Jordan?
Pistol Pete.
Maravich is the best basketball player of all time.
No,
I mean,
I'm just saying.
I think I would pick Larry Bird before I would pick Pistol Pete.
I mean, you're probably right. Everybody asks those two, but what if it's not those two?
Well, who else would it be?
Why
If
does
it's
it
not
have to
those
be
two,
why does it have to be an individual?
what else would it be?
I
If
don't-
it's
I
if you're
don't
the
know.
greatest basketball player of all time, who else would it be?
I grew up on Jordans. Of course it's Jordan.
I know it's Jordan, right?
One thing that separates me for me is like I hate it when I'm across the sidelines from a coach that's whining after every play that doesn't go their way.
mm,
And watching some of the players today that like they don't get a call,
mm-hmm,
they cry about it.
mm-hmm.
And LeBron falls in that category. Like he will avoid fast breaks if he doesn't get the call that he wants. And I don't ever. So maybe this goes back to effort, but it's like who grinded more than anyone? Like maybe Kobe was
Maybe
an
Kobe.
exception because he put in, like, I love reading about him, like as the role model athlete.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing that compares to the amount of work that he put in. Even though he was in his years in the NBA, he was probably the best player.
He was the best player, but his work ethic was also better than anybody else.
Yeah. So maybe I don't really care about who's the best, but I just like who identifies with what I'm trying to coach or what I'm trying to do. And it's who worked hard.
Yeah.
Who worked the hardest.
Besides LeBron, LeBron's a physical freak. Like you can't get around that.
Mhm.
But in the era that Jordan played, like LeBron would get beaten up and he wouldn't be getting all the calls that he's getting. I think that.
Besides, I have a personal experience with LeBron James that wasn't the greatest.
Really? Can we talk about that? Or
Probably not.
Okay, second random question. What was your personal experience with him?
It wasn't even that big a deal. It's like, why you got to act like that?
Yeah.
And the one time that these people are close to you and are in their, okay. So one time me and some of the executive team we had some nice seats and they had arranged for us the NBA used to do this thing where after the halftime, you could stand by the doors where the players come back on the court.
Right.
And it was like a kids care initiative.
Mm-hmm.
And you stand there, and if your organization was part of the Jazz's foundations and the donation things, those are the people that got to stand down there. And we were in the right spot, and everybody comes out. Varejao gives us a high five. Kevin Love stops and talks to us for a couple seconds. Even Kyrie's like doing
Uncle
it.
Drew?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. And so this is the Cavs. And LeBron comes out and doesn't really high five anybody or whatever, but he goes around us and sits on the benches that are just behind us, which is where they sit, but that's also where we stand. And apparently we were too close to him, and he tells the security personnel that are standing right there, get these mother effers out of my face. And we're not doing anything other than what the NBA
allowed,
like, organizes.
Mhm.
And it was just and we could hear him say it. And it
Mhm.
was just this moment where you're like, hey, that was your shot to make an impression. And I know he does amazing things for his local community.
Absolutely, and in education and everything else, for sure.
State of economy of Ohio is,
Yeah.
But there's these moments. You have these moments, and
Yeah.
that moment forever for me, until I meet him again and have a real conversation. That's my one moment.
Yeah.
And that's my
Interesting. And that's what you take away, unfortunately. All right. Next, we'll move on to the next random question.
Are these supposed to be one-word answers? Sorry.
No. This is the beauty of the random question, is
All right.
it sparks some sort of
Okay.
discussion. Who's your favorite coach in the state of Utah? Kyle Whittingham or Kalani Sitake?
I'm also not going to choose those. I'm going to go Chris Burgess.
The basketball coach?
Yeah, the one that just left the U to come back to BYU.
Yeah, he's not my favorite coach.
Well, he's mine.
Is he really your favorite coach?
Look,
I thought maybe you'd say,
his son,
Jay Hill is my favorite coach. By the way, I love Jay Hill.
Yeah, I've been to some of the practices, and he's just a riot. He wears cleats and he just goes at it.
Yeah, he's your secret power for BYU football, by the way.
But Chris, his son, Beckham, plays on our baseball team.
Oh,
so I like Chris a lot. We talk all the time.
Uh-huh.
And I was gunning for him for the role, but I like what he's going to bring back to the.
Yeah.
So in terms of, he may not be as good a coach as some of these other coaches, but as a human that I know,
he's
I like
not.
him.
He doesn't live up to the reputation of being a terrible person.
I have not witnessed that, one.
Okay.
Or heard that. So as a Utah,
you know how social media is.
Yeah, as a Utah man, I know where you think you're coming from, but he's a treasure. Not just a Utah treasure, he's a national treasure.
Is he going to win a national championship?
I mean, it's got to grind. You got to grind on that path.
Okay. Who is a bigger role model in your life? Ron Swanson or Ron Burgundy?
So you were listening. Here's the.
I take this fairly seriously.
I honestly believe that if my dad was a TV character, he would be Ron Swanson.
Like the way he acts?
Mustache and everything. The way he's like, no, I don't want to talk to you. And yes, I have a claymore pointed at your face if you ask me the wrong question. But Ron Swanson of Parks and Recreation is also a national treasure. And that's my dad personified in a TV character. But I don't know that you beat Ron Burgundy.
What's your favorite Ron Burgundy quote?
Well, related to this, I'm kind of a big deal. People know me. I have many leather-bound books, and my apartment smells of rich mahogany.
Oh, that's a good one.
The greatest line in that whole movie is probably not by him. It's by Brian Fantana, where 60% of the time it works every time. Yes, I believe I use that on the daily.
Were you inspired to take up jazz flute by
Jazz flute?
Yes.
Yeah. And that's also what I say when I say the Utah Yaz. Again, Anchorman.
It's so great.
Yeah.
We should do a podcast just on our favorite Anchorman. We did, I'll just share this. We got to go on a golf trip together. Was that 3 nights or 4 nights? I can't remember.
Oh.
But every night.
It was a week. It was almost a full week. So 4 or 5 nights.
And what did we do every single night?
I mean, without the influence of narcotics or alcohol,
Dairy Queen.
Only Dairy Queen shakes. We decided that we were going to do a Kevin Hart marathon each night. And apparently he doesn't have to learn lines because the movies are the exact same.
What did we discover? Yeah. That the movies are exactly the same.
Exactly the same.
Every movie.
Yep.
and all so entertaining.
Yep.
Okay. I only get you here for a few more minutes. I think this has been a fascinating discussion, but I want to talk more about kind of life lessons, how you approach your personal life and your work life based on all of this experience that you've had. What are the best things that you do? What are things that you're still working on? Role models, mentors, quotes that you use. I just want to dig into some of that stuff. So I'm just gonna let you start talking to me about some of those things. Like if you think about your work life, what is it that you do well? What do you lean on? How do you help? I know you're thoughtful about your past and how digging stuff out of that and utilizing it appropriately in your current life is helpful, but what do you lean on?
Yeah. I do fancy myself as a pretty good people manager at Adobe, and measure myself on how often and how much are people getting promoted, and they're getting placed in the places that they want to go. And one of the things that I mentioned earlier, where I bore the burden of those hardships alone, and I think one of the things that's changed about that as I've gone further in my career is that um, being able to build these levels of trust with the people that I work with, and being able to extend that trust and allow others to share a burden with me. And that's hard for a person that wants it this way and is used to relying on their own strength. And I have such good team members now that that bring such amazing talent and value, and not just skills, but they're just great humans. And the way that you're going to help them grow is by empowering them. And so I feel like that's something that I have taken from previous experiences, and probably not doing it the right way. Maybe situationally that was the only way to get out of a jam, but with the great situation I've been afforded now at Adobe, like it's been a learning experience, but it's paid off so big. Like one of my team members is Isaiah Kafusi,
Oh,
who played at BYU.
yeah, and his brothers played it, or
Yep,
cousin
Corbin
brothers
and
played it to you.
Bronson.
They've all played, yeah.
And so his cousins and his brothers, and a lot of them at the U, some at BYU,
Sure.
and he made it on the Colts squad for a while, um and he's like he joined my team maybe a year and a half ago, and he's already been promoted, and he has an exact path. He's got this thing, like he'll come and guest coach it for my football teams, and he's got this thing, this dream it, see it, believe it, achieve it. And that has how he had it up on his mirror his whole childhood. And while at BYU, and while at the Colts, and now at Adobe.
Yeah.
And he's just like, he has so much to bring. And if I'm trying to be a helicopter manager or trying to hover and critique everything, then you lose that spark.
Mhm.
And that would be a shame, because he's bringing Isaiah to the team. He's bringing a spark, and that is just something that you don't want to stifle at all. So that's a lesson learned.
I love all the stuff that you said. There's plenty of lessons. I don't need to pick it apart. But one thing I want to mention about that is I asked you about Adobe. I know that Adobe has significant goals, revenue, financial goals and you mentioned how your team it's a stressful situation for your team. Like you have a lot to accomplish and you're working with big partners, and you want to make sure those partners feel good about working with and aligning with Adobe. And when I asked you about that, there was not a number that you quoted. You didn't talk about anything that we have to reach this milestone. You said, I'm concerned about my people.
Mm.
And that is the most important thing in any organization. So if there's a lesson in that, I think that's the lesson, is that you resonate with the people experience. And probably because all of the stuff, and you said it, all of the stuff that you've gone through in your life, that's put you in this, where you can recognize that, where you can see that.
Yeah.
See, this is the thing I'm talking about, that you're so talented, you don't even recognize how talented you are.
Yeah, maybe not.
Do you have like a business or life philosophy that you follow?
Yeah, I think so. I think that there was a lot of people are, Angela Duckworth has become like this huge celebrity ever since she came out with this, grit for business concept. And people add on to it and show new angles of it. But she's amazing. And there was one time where she did have a guest, and it was, anyway, we met this gentleman that was like fully tattooed, but on his neck, he had grit and grace written on it. And I cannot remember the context for why he was, sorry, but he had grit and grace written on his neck. And I immediately, because grit is what we've been talking about. Grit is the perseverance, the relentlessness, the ability to handle rejection and pivot. It's what my dad taught me with improvise, adapt, overcome, all these army things, right? Like he's always using them, and he uses them for mowing the lawn as much as he did probably for being in the special operations units. But it's so true. It's like the translatability. But when I saw grit and grace, and it may have been a picture that she showed or something, but this gentleman had grit and grace on his neck. And I was like, that's the other part of the equation. And that's what I think I'm changing about the way I raise my kids, the way I want to manage people on my team, the way I want to manage or foster relationships, is that there is always going to be a grit component to it. Like you got to work at it. You got to make things work. You got to figure it out. But then the grace is if grit is the what, the grace is the how. Like how do you treat people? How do you build them up? How do you, we were talking about this a little bit as a precursor, but one of the things that I value the most about coaching my two sons, and hopefully when my baby girl is old enough, is that I am the head coach and my son's the quarterback. Not because he's talented, like he should be there, but we will yell at each other in practice sometimes. But what that does is that like any like contention that we may have, it's like taking care of there, and as we go home, like it doesn't rear its ugly head again. And I feel like there's just so many examples of, you can have all the grit in the world, but like, let's combine it with some grace. Let's combine it with doing it the right way and treating people the right way. And that's been, if I could amend the motto that we've been using for most of the conversation, mostly around grit, the way I try to do it today is maybe a blend of both.
Yeah. And a little evolution of
doing it all, but doing it in a way that makes other people feel some joy.
Super insightful. Very insightful. Okay, before I let you go, if there was one book that you could recommend, what would that book be and why?
Okay, well, I feel like I'm terrible at single line answers, but I like the way Malcolm Gladwell makes me think in a new way about old or established thinking. The David and Goliath concept. Who really had the advantage or disadvantage? I also love anything by Clayton Christensen. Innovator's Dilemma, Innovator's DNA. All these things. He has an amazing book that, whether you're LDS or not, is fantastic, called How Will You Measure Your Life? It just puts things in perspective.
Yeah.
Like, are you going to measure it in dollars or in relationships?
Yeah.
But the book that I probably would recommend is there's a book by Stephen Covey's son called Speed of Trust. And everything that we've been talking about with this working together and getting through things, those people that wrote those recommendation letters for me, it was all about trust. It's trust that you're not going to run my name through the mud. Adobe deciding to honor an MBA offer. It's trusting that my profile is a good fit for their company. The trust I have in my employees and my boss has in me. And there's so much that's built on that. And the premise of the book is that when trust exists, like the speed of everything that matters is vastly accelerated.
I was just going to say that. I was just going to say trust is the accelerator in business, in your personal life. And that's a great way to end this podcast. Rustin, Fullmer, Adobe, you have been fantastic. I couldn't have asked for anything better. Really appreciate you taking the time. I hope we can do this again sometime when people do know you.
Yeah. In 30 years or so.
There he is.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Rustin
Frank.
Fullmer.
Yeah,
Thank you.
appreciate you, man.
Thank you for listening to the Know Your Ship podcast presented by eHub. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review.